All right. Well, thank you for joining me today. My name is Brittany Grother, and I'm the grants coordinator for the Division of Ag Marketing at the Kansas Department of Agriculture, and I'm the grants administrator for the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program in Kansas. Today, we are going to do an application walkthrough. So I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to apply for a Specialty Crop Block Grant in Kansas. If you haven't already, I'd encourage you to look over the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program overview presentation we did earlier in the month, and that recording is posted on our website as well. So at this point, I'm going to switch my screen sharing over to our website. All right. So this is the Kansas Department of Agriculture website. So where you're going to go to find the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program is you're going to go to Services, Grants and Cost Share Programs, and then Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. So this is kind of where everything you would need to know would be located at. The applications for the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program for 2024 are due on Friday, March 15th at 5 p.m. Please note the time on this is 5 p.m. and not midnight. So make sure to have it done by close of business on March 15th. So there are a couple different steps that you have to take to apply for a Specialty Crop Block Grant. The first is to download and read the 2024 Kansas Request for Applications document. This document was primarily covered during the program overview presentation, but if you have any questions, it's always a good source of information as the Request for Applications document is. It's going to have the requirements of the program, important reporting dates you need to know, how to figure out your budget, those type of things, but I can open it really quick. So this is kind of going to be your source for your questions, but I'm also always available to answer questions by email or by phone as well. So it kind of breaks down the purpose of the program, some definitions you might need to know, some project examples, allowable costs, any restrictions from the federal government, those type of things. It also goes over the project expectations. So the reports that are required if you receive the award, those type of things. And then it also goes over the application process, which is what we're going to do today. Then it also has a copy of the scoring rubric, which is what is used by the external review committee to score the applications. So as you're writing, it's always a good idea to look at the rubrics to know what's going to be given more value in an application, so you know really what you need to hit home on. Okay, so number 2 on how to apply is to download and complete the project profile template. So this is the meat of your application. This is where you're going to write out your plans, your goals, your budget. All of those things happen in your project profile template. So this is a fillable PDF, which means that you're going to need to open it from your desktop. So when you click on it, it's going to download. And you're probably going to get like this error message. Excuse me. So what that means is you cannot view this application in a web browser. You must download it. So you need to go over here where I'm circling my mouse and hit download this file. And you want to save it somewhere you can get it. So right now I'm going to put it on my desktop and hit save. So then what you're going to do is you're going to navigate to wherever you saved your file. Let me make sure that it's tracking on the screen sharing. Okay, perfect. So you're going to navigate to your file explorer, and then you're going to find where you saved it, and then you're going to open it from there.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So I did that, and I'm just getting a PDF of that same page with the error message.
Um, what PDF software do you have on your computer? Do you have Adobe or Kofax or Nuance or?
I don't. That's probably the issue. I just have a Chromebook.
So you will need to download a free PDF viewer software. So let me bring that over. Yeah, so I would recommend, this is what the USDA recommends as well, because it's their template, is if you don't have any PDF viewing software on your computer, to download Adobe Acrobat Reader, which is what I have up on the screen right now. It's completely free. You don't have to download their security, whatever. You can just download Adobe Acrobat Reader, and that is completely free. This is from Adobe, and that way you can access the file on your computer, because you do have to have some sort of PDF viewing software to be able to access it.
So that's the only option to access this. There's no way to go into an office and like get a paper copy or something like that.
No, unfortunately, it's an interactive form. So based off of what you are selecting in the form, it will expand. So you have to fill out the electronic version of it, because it interacts with what you put into it. And I can kind of go through those interactive fields as we go through the application.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the first year that the USDA has rolled out the fillable PDF as a requirement for applicants to fill out. Last year it was optional, so Kansas opted to use the Word document version. But this year it's a requirement that all applicants have to fill out the fillable PDF version.
Okay.
So this is what the project profile template looks like in a PDF viewing software. This is the meat of your application. So I'm going to go step by step through this document to show you how to fill it out. So organization detail is going to be the main applicant's information. So even if you have partners working on it, this is going to be the main organization who's working on your project. So you're going to put your organization's name, your contact name, phone number, email, fax number if you have a fax, and then your mailing address here. Next thing you're going to do is give your project a title. So this is what's going to be associated with your project the whole way through it if it's funded. This is how the USDA will reference it, is your project title. So sometimes people are creative with their project titles. Sometimes it's just saying exactly what you're going to do on your project. It's up to you. There's no points associated with your project title. So the next thing is the duration of the project. So this is something you should reference from the request for applications document. Our projects can start, or projects have to start on September 30th of 2024. At the earliest. That is when we're going to contract with you to start your project, is September 30th. In your projects, we give preference to projects that are 1 year in duration. So that would be an end date of September 29th, 2025, but projects can be up to 3 years in length. So that's something as you're developing your projects, make sure you're giving yourself enough time. Just know that we prefer projects that are 1 year in duration. That doesn't mean we only fund projects that are 1 year in duration. We fund projects that are 2 years, etc. So keep that in mind as you're filling out your duration of your project start date and end date. The next field is your project partner and summary. The USDA does a pretty good job of explaining what they're looking for this field. So they want to know the name of the applicant organization, your project's purpose and your expected outcomes, deliverables, and then what you're generally going to do in your project. So this one does have a word limit of 250 words or less. So you really can't put a whole lot of information in this section. So keep that in mind. The USDA is looking for something concise, but a good summary of what your project is going to be. The next section is project purpose. So this is going to be a much bigger text field. It has a 5,000 character limit. Keep in mind the difference between a word limit and a character limit is character limit includes special symbols like commas, apostrophes, those things like that, as well as spaces. So, and enters, like if you return a line. So keep that in mind. That's how that one is factored. But this is where you're going to provide the specific issue or problem or need that your project is going to address in the Kansas specialty crop industry. So this is where you can really get into the details on what is the need in the state specialty crop industry and how your specific project is going to address that need or fix the problem or solve the issue. So this is where the majority of the narrative section of your application is going to be. This is where you really get to stretch out and talk about exactly the problem, the issue, the need, and how your project is going to fix it in the state, or at least help in the state. So the next thing is a listing of objectives. You can add lines here, but the minimum it looks like is 2. So in the number column, you're going to put 1, and then you're going to put your objective. So the first goal that your project has, basically, what is objective number 1? And then, so you just put that text here, and then you just number them as you go. So keep in mind that as you add objectives that you have to report on every objective that you put on your project profile. So if you are awarded the grant, every quarter you're going to be required to give an update on the status of your objectives. Same thing on an annual or final report basis. Every time you have to submit a report, you're going to have to talk about the status of each objective. So I would not encourage you to go crazy with the number of objectives. I would say probably no more than 5 or 7 objectives maximum. That would just be a big reporting burden on your end. So keep it concise, keep your goals clear as you're filling out your objectives. The next section is project beneficiaries. So this is where you're going to give an estimate on how many people will be impacted by your project. Maybe you're going to do an educational based project and you anticipate you're going to have 50 people participate in your project over time who are going to learn from your series of educational workshops or something like that. So then you would just put 50 there. These next 2, you're going to need to refer to the request for applications document, but these are yes or no questions. Does this project directly benefit underserved farmers as defined in the request for applications document? That's a yes or no. And same thing, does this project directly benefit beginning farmers as defined in the request for applications? So yes or no on those. This next statement is just a checkbox. You have to check it if you want your application to go forward. By checking the box to the right, I confirm that this project enhances the competitiveness of specialty crops in accordance with and defined by the Farm Bill. So the Farm Bill definition or USDA's definition of what a specialty crop is, make sure that those are the crops that are going to be impacted by your project, and make sure that it's going to benefit more than just one business. That's the gist of that. So you have to check it. And then the next thing is continuation project information. So have you previously been funded by a specialty crop block grant project for this project? That's a yes or no. If it's yes, if you have been previously funded by a specialty crop block grant project, you need to fill out the following text boxes. So you need to provide the award number or numbers and the project titles previously funded in that box. And then you have to describe how this project will be different from and build upon previous efforts. And then you have to provide a summary of the outcomes of the previous efforts that were already funded by a specialty crop block grant. And then you have to provide the lessons learned from your previous, specialty crop block grants, and how you will improve this project that you're applying to be funded based off of those improvements. And how you're going to incorporate those basically. So all of those have to be filled out if you've been funded before for a specialty crop block grant. And I'm trying to get it to not jump to the next page. So this next one is answered by everyone, whether you selected yes or no to the question of it being previously funded by a specialty crop block grant. You have to describe the likeliness of your project becoming self-sustaining and not indefinitely dependent on grant funds. So we don't want to fund projects that have to keep coming back and asking for more funds to be sustainable and keep going. So that section is where you're going to put how it's going to be self-sustaining. So maybe you're going to have community involvement who will continue to pay for materials or things like that. Okay. And then this next section is where you have to disclose if this project is being funded by other federal or state grant programs. So maybe you have a grant from a state program that's maybe offered by Kansas Tourism or Kansas Department of Commerce or something along those lines. That's where you're going to disclose this. Same thing if you have a different USDA grant, things like that. If you have a federal loan, like for example, from the Farm Service Agency, you do not have to disclose that here. It's just other grant programs. So that's a yes or no drop down. If you are marking yes, you need to fill out the following two text boxes. You have to identify the grant programs, and then you have to describe how this project is different or supplemental to those grant efforts, because we won't fund projects that are duplication of funds. So we can't pay for the same thing that's being funded off of a different grant, basically. All right, the next section is external project support. So this is where you're going to describe other stakeholders in the specialty crop industry in Kansas who support your project and why. So this shouldn't be those who are partnering with your grant. So anyone who would receive funding from this project should not be listed in this section. These should be people outside of your project who support the mission of your project. So that can be peers, like if you're a grower and you have other growers. It could be other organizations in your area. It could be your community economic development group. And any types of people can be listed under specialty crop stakeholders as long as they're not invested into your project and receiving payments from your project. So something to think about here with external project support is that we also accept letters of support with this grant program, but they're not required. So any letters of support that you upload with your application materials will be given to the external review committee, but you will not be deducted points from not having letters of support. They're just there to help support your project proposal, basically. So they're definitely recommended. The majority of applications that are turned in have letters of support with them. So just keep that in mind. You can have a letter of support from someone and also write them in the external project support text box. Okay. So this next part is where the form gets really interactive. You have to select the outcomes and indicators and sub-indicators that you're going to report on throughout the time of your project. So these are the metrics that the USDA uses to determine the success of your project, basically. So they're kind of hard to see on this template because it expands as you click on them. So if you are wanting to see all of them as a big list so that you can review them all before you start checking boxes on your application, I would recommend you going on our website and pulling up the outcomes and indicators document. So I'm going to switch over to that really quick. Okay, so once you get to the Kansas Department of Agriculture website, navigate to services, grants and cost share programs, specialty crop block grant program. And you're going to scroll down to application resources. And you're going to click on the Specialty Crop Block Grant Performance Measures document. This is another PDF, but it should open in your web browser because it's not interactive. And here it lists out all the available outcomes and indicators and sub-indicators you can choose from for your project. And keep in mind, you have to report on every single one of these on a quarterly, annual, and final basis. So I wouldn't go crazy and try to select all of them. Just really focus on the main goals of your project when you're picking out your outcomes and indicators. So maybe your goal is to increase consumption and consumer purchasing of specialty crops. You would select outcome 1. 1.1 is the total number of consumers who gain knowledge about specialty crops. You're going to put in a goal number here. And then all throughout your project, you would be updating that number on your actuals. Then it breaks down to adults and children, because some people's projects are focused on specifically adults and some people are focused specifically on children, and so on. So I would encourage you to open up this document on our website and look through all of them. Because everybody's project is different and your overarching goals are all going to be different. So maybe you're wanting to focus on food safety. So you're probably going to look more into outcome 3. Maybe you're doing pest and disease control of specialty crops. That's outcome 4 that you're going to be looking at. Developing new seed varieties in specialty crops, expanding specialty crop research and development. All of those types of things have outcomes and indicators associated with them for you to look at. Okay. So like I said, this is where it gets interactive. So for example, you are wanting to do increasing consumption and consumer purchasing of specialty crops. You're going to select that one, and then it's going to pop open more. So for each one of these, you need to either enter a value or hit not applicable. So let's say in my project, I want to impact 125 people, for example, and I'm only focusing on adults. So I'm going to put 125 here and put not applicable for children. So you have to fill out the whole table. So even if you're only focused on indicator 1.1, you would then just go put not applicable on all the other ones, for example. So that's how you fill out that section. And then if there is an outcome that you want to have for your project that's not defined by the USDA on that document, you can put it here under miscellaneous outcome measure. So that is where you're going to write your own outcome and your own indicator, but know that that's subject to approval by the USDA and they might not approve it. They really prefer that you use their set outcomes and indicators. Okay, the next section is data collection to report on outcomes and indicators. So for each outcome and indicator that you select, you have to describe how you're going to collect the data to measure the number that you wrote down as your goal. So some of them, it might seem repetitive how you're explaining how you're going to do the data collection, but you need to explain the data collection on each one. That is a requirement from the USDA. So for example, if you had outcome 1.1, you'd say outcome 1.1, and say I'm going to do post-event surveys to understand how many adults gained knowledge of specialty crops. These surveys will be done on paper at the conclusion of each workshop or something along those lines. And then I would do the same thing for whatever next one I've selected. So maybe I'm outcome 1.2, then I would explain how I'm going to collect that data. So for each one that you select on the checkbox, you need to explain how you're going to collect the data for that. The more descriptive you are of how you're going to collect the data, the better. That's just the preference of the USDA. All right, so the next thing we're going to get into, which is really the remainder of the application, is the budget narrative section. So I would recommend that you fill out your individual budget tables first and then come back up and fill out your budget summary table, which is what we're looking at right now. Just to make sure, because sometimes you add things at the last minute to a budget table and they don't get transferred up top. I would save this as the last thing you fill out, just to make sure that all of your expenses match throughout the document. But for the Specialty Crop Block Grant, you can request funds for personnel, fringe benefits, travel, equipment, supplies, contractors, or contractual services. There's an other category for things that might not fit in one of those big categories. And then you can also request indirect cost. Okay. So the first section is personnel. So anyone who is going to charge hours or time to the grant can be listed in the personnel. So you're going to put 1, and then you're going to put your personal name title. So we'll say Brittany Rother, grants coordinator. So level of effort can either be written as the number of hours or the percentage of a full-time employee. So we'll say if this project is a 1-year grant, maybe somebody charges 25% of their time to be devoted to this project. And then in the funds requested column, you're going to put the actual dollar value of the funds you're going to request. So however much 25% of an FTE is, you would put that in the funds requested. Ideally, these should auto sum for you. I'm just going to put an amount. I don't have any idea. Yeah, it should auto sum for you, which should help you when you fill out your budget summary table. But as you have more people, you can add lines. If you accidentally add too many lines, you can hit the subtract button. So that's another interactive component of this form. So for every person you list on the personnel table, you have to justify what they will be doing for your project. So you're going to type in your first person, and then explain what they will be doing for the project. So maybe this person will be doing administrative work for the project, including keeping and all purchases or something along those lines. So basically just explain what each person associated with the project is going to be doing. Also, you can put people on here who will not be charging time to the grant. So for example, if someone's going to donate all their time to the project, you can still list them here because they're going to devote time for the project. But in funds requested, you would just put 0. You would put 0. Okay, the next section is fringe benefits. So every person who you put on the personnel table should be listed in the fringe benefits table, even if they're not going to charge any fringe benefits to the grant. So put them all in here, and you don't have to do the justification because it's the same people who are on the personnel table. Okay, the next thing is travel. This is for any travel you're going to do associated with your grant. So maybe you need to travel to farms where you're going to do educational workshops, or you need to travel to a conference to present your research findings. Anything like that you can charge to the grant as travel costs. So it can be airfare, car rental, hotels, mileage if you're driving like a business vehicle or a personal vehicle, you can charge mileage reimbursement, but you need to break it down by trip. So I'm going to put 1 here. Let's see, we're going to go, for example, to a conference in Orlando, Florida. The type of expense, I'm going to say airfare. I'm going to put round trip so that I can get a ticket both ways. I just need 1. It's just 1 person who's going to go. How much is the airplane ticket going to be? You're going to probably unless you know for sure, if you can look up the exact dates of the conference, look up your flights, it's probably going to be an estimate here, which is okay as long as it's reasonable. So I would still encourage you to look up flights about that time of year, things like that. You put your flight cost, the number of travelers claiming this expense, it's just going to be one. And then your funds requested. Well, sometimes you might have more than one that you're asking for in terms of units. So that's where the difference between cost per unit and funds requested comes in. So say you're still on the same trip. I would then put a 1 here because you're going to group them all together. You're still going to Orlando, Florida. And now I'm going to say hotel. And I'm going to be there for 3 nights, basically. Oops. So I need to put nights. The number of units, 3, because I'm going to be there 3 nights. The cost per unit, let's say it's $100. It's just one traveler still, but it's going to be 300. Because we're taking the number of units times the cost per unit. So that's what you keep doing. If you have other trips, I would start a new number. But this way, at least they're grouped together so that when you come down to the travel justification, you can say trip 1, because everything associated with trip 1 is labeled number 1 in your table, so that you don't have to do so many lines when you have lots of trips. So trip 1, we're going to say we're going to go in April of 2026. And the justification for the trip would be like, I'm going to attending a conference to present research findings, for example. So that's how you'd fill out the travel section. If you're a private company, you probably do not have as strict of travel policies as, say, a university or a state agency would have. But you do have to check this box that say you confirm with the travel policy of your organization. If you don't have any travel costs, you don't have to check the box. But if you have put any type of travel costs, you do have to check that box if you want to be considered for funding. All right, the next section is equipment. So the only type of equipment that can be purchased under the Specialty Crop Block Grant is special purpose equipment. It can be purchased or rented. But special purpose equipment has to have an acquisition cost that equals or exceeds $5,000 and is only used for research, medical, scientific, or other technical activities. So for the most part, the majority of specialty crop block grants do not include any equipment purchases. And that's because the equipment has to be very specific to be approved on a specialty crop block grant. But say you need to buy something for research, like a piece of equipment for research, you're going to write it out, say it's some type of tank application system for pesticide or something along those lines. You're going to buy it. Your acquisition date needs to be a date on the calendar. So for the most part, most people will put their start date of their project on acquisition date. And then your funds requested. So it has to be over $5,000 per unit. So we're going to say it's 5,000. And then same thing down here, you have to justify it. So you're going to put equipment 1. And then you're going to describe what the equipment is used for and why it's necessary for your project. If you have any questions about special purpose equipment or in general what's allowable or unallowable to be spent for a specialty crop block grant, there is a spot on our website where we have listed the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service Terms and Conditions document. So I'll pull that back up over here. So again, scroll down to application resources and you're going to want to go to the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service General Terms and Conditions document. This is going to be a PDF. You should be able to view it on the internet. Oh, I already had it up. So you're gonna want to, oops, let me load it. You're gonna want to go to section 8 of the AMS terms and conditions document, and you're gonna go down to section 8.2, allowable and unallowable costs and activities. And this is where it breaks down everything. So say you wanted to buy land with this grant, which is not eligible, you would see that it is unallowable for the acquisition of buildings, facilities, or lands. But maybe you want to attend a conference. So for the most part, that's allowable. And they explain here what types of expenses you could charge to the grant for a conference. Maybe you want to hold one with your project. Maybe you want to go to one. It explains all of that here. It can talk about EBT machines that are not allowable, entertainment costs. A lot of things have unallowable and allowable under them. So you're just going to have to read into them a little bit. But equipment here, they have a nice breakdown of what is eligible in terms of equipment. They also have like farm gardening and production supplies. Meals, if you were having an event and you wanted to have meals with it. All of those types of things, printing and publications, can be found in the AMS terms and conditions document. So if you have a question about what is an eligible cost and what's not, I would encourage you to go to section 8.2 of the terms and conditions document to review that. All right, so the next section is supplies, and that's where a lot of people charge funds to this grant for their project, is the supplies. So the supplies are anything under $5,000 that are materials, supplies, or fabricated parts needed for your project. So you can expand out this table as much as you need to put supplies in. And then again, you have to justify each supply line, what it is and why you need it for your project. And then contractual is the next section. So that can be any type of good you're purchasing from someone, or like a contractual relationship of maybe you're going to hire someone to do some video work for you. Maybe part of your project is focused on recording video and you need to hire a videographer. That could be a contractual person if they're outside of your organization, but you're wanting to pay them for a service. You could list them as a contractor. You can list them at an hourly rate or a flat rate for their services, the rate value, and the funds requested. Again, for each contractor, you have to describe what they're going to do for the project and why that's needed. There is a requirement in here that hourly contractors cannot exceed the salary of a GS-15 Step 10 federal employee in your area. If you're at any point concerned that your contractor might be too high, just give me a call or send me an email and we can look up the salary of a federal employee in your area of the state to make sure that it's not exceeding that. Now, for the most part, if a contractor is reasonably priced in their quote to you, it's going to be fine. If you have any type of contractual expenses on your project, you need to select the conforming with procurement standards checkbox there. And then other is kind of the catch-all category for things that might not have been in a different budget table up top. So this could be like a conference registration. Maybe you're going to travel to a conference that you have listed in the conference budget table, but you need to pay the registration fee. The registration fee could go here. Maybe you're going to print something to go with your project. Maybe you have pamphlets or handouts that you're going to give out. That could be put under other. Maybe you're printing a textbook or something like that. That can go under other. There's a lot of different things that can go in there. Sometimes like software purchases can sometimes go under other as well. If they're allowable costs for your project and are needed just for this project, you can include them there. And then same thing with all the tables. You need to describe and justify every line on the other table. Okay, the last section of your budget narrative is going to be indirect cost. So the indirect cost rate is capped for the specialty crop block program at 8%. So this is a federal requirement. Indirect is capped at 8%. Even if you have a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement with the federal government, you can only charge 8% to the specialty crop block grant. So to figure this, you would take 8% of your total budget cost. So think of all the tables you just filled out. 8% of that total cost is how much you can request an indirect rate. If you anticipate receiving income from your project, you need to document it in the program income table. So for example, if you're hosting workshops and you're going to charge a registration fee of $25 per person, you're going to need to document that as program income. And then you're going to need to describe how you plan to reinvest that income into your project. You can't just profit off of the specialty crop block grant project. You have to be reinvesting it back into the project. So that's where you document that there. Once you filled out all your budget tables, I would encourage you, like I recommended earlier, to go back up to your budget summary table and then fill in all of the amounts that your table is auto summed for you here. Yeah. So that is the project profile template. So that's really the meat of your application. That's what you're going to spend most of your time on for your submission. So in addition to that, other than your optional letters of support you're collecting, where you're going to upload your project profile template and any letters of support you gather is going to be on our application portal. And close out of this. So step 5, complete the online application and upload your support materials here. So when you click on that button, it's going to take you to our online application. And this really shouldn't take you very much time. It's mainly just filling out some basic information about your organization and your project. So it's going to have you put in an email address here, and that is where you are going to receive a copy of your completed submission. So for your records, after you submit everything, whatever email address you put in this box is where everything's going to be delivered to a copy of. So you're going to hit next. Please note there's a save progress button down here as you progress through the application. So you don't have to start over every time you need to step away from it. You can hit save progress. It'll ask you to create a username and password, which is completely free, but that helps you as you go through the process so you don't have to restart every time. You can go back and access a saved application. So here you're going to put in your general contact information. So you're going to put in your organization, your address, all that information. Unfortunately, you guys have to watch me fill this out because it's all required. Your federal tax ID number, that's going to be associated with your business. I'm just going to put a bunch of ones. And then your UEI number is a number from the federal government called a unique entity ID. And this is required of all applicants for any federal program. If you do not have a UEI number yet, I would encourage you to get started on that process. Where you're going to get your UEI number is a website called sam.gov. This is the only website you can get it from, so please don't try to get it from somewhere else. You might have to pay for it, and that's a scam, and we don't want that to happen. So sam.gov is the website you need to go to. It's completely free to get a UEI number. You're going to hit get started. It kind of talks you through the process of what you might need. You do not have to go through the full registration process. You only need a UEI number to be generated. So once you get here, once you get to get started, the next step, you're going to choose between registering an entity or getting a unique entity ID. You only have to get a unique entity ID. So please only do that one. The other one is a lot more work and a lot more paperwork and takes a lot more time. So just get the unique entity ID. It's basically just verifying your legal business name and your business address. So keep that in mind that it's not automatic. So I would encourage you to do it ahead of time before the March 15th deadline, just in case it takes that system a while to generate the number for you. All right, so Then you would put your UEI number in there. So your principal investigator or PI is the main contact on your project. So who is going to be doing the majority of the work on your project? That's who you're going to put as your main contact. You're going to put their title, their phone number, email address, and then the next one is your authorized signatory. So who has the legal authority in your business to sign a contract? That's who you're going to put here. Hey, if you have someone else who's going to do all of your reporting for you, you can put them down as your reporting contact. And then if you have someone who's going to do all of your invoicing for you, you would put them as your financial reporting contact. Okay, the next thing is project title. So whatever you wrote on your project profile template, put here as project title. Please know it caps at 15 words. The next thing you're going to do is select which specialty crop industry sector will benefit from your project. So if you are going to do a project focused on Christmas trees, you would select Christmas trees, and then you'd select all the varieties of Christmas trees you plan to work with on your project. So this is interactive, so anytime you click one, it'll pop open a box for you. So if you want to do cut flowers, then you want to focus on tulips and iris, things like that. Please note there's always an all of the above option on these check boxes, so you don't have to select them all individually, especially if you were to get into, say, vegetables. That's a lot. If you say you're going to do all of them, just hit all of the above. But please only select what you're actually going to work with for your project. Total proposed project cost is how much the project is going to cost in entirety. The funding request is how much you want the USDA / the Kansas Department of Agriculture to pay for. So please note we cap our projects at $75,000. So if your project is over $75,000, you would be responsible for the difference there. But your funding request should be no more than $75,000. Next is your geographic reach. So think of your project and the reach your project is going to have. Is it going to impact statewide? Is it going to impact a specific region? If it's a region, we're going to have you put down what region that is. Same thing with county. You can list all the counties that it's going to impact, but you do have to talk about the geographic reach of your project. The next thing is a brief project summary. So think of this as what would be put out in a news release or on the Kansas Department of Agriculture website. It needs to be suitable for public distribution and it needs to be concise. So it's limited at 250 words. I probably need to put things here. Sorry about that. I should have been selecting them as we went, so they would let me move on. Okay, this is the last page. This is where you're going to upload everything. So the project profile template that we walked through earlier, you're going to upload that file here. You're going to have a work plan, which is basically a timetable, which we have on the website, and then any letters of support you have. And then you're going to certify that to the best of your knowledge, the information in your application is true and correct. And then you're going to sign it by typing your name, and then you'll hit submit. So that's what that looks like. I'm going to flip back to the work plan because I forgot to talk about that one. And this one is really easy. It's just a timeline of your project. What is going to get done, when it's going to get done, and who is going to do it. So we'll wait for that to load. But really, we also have some sample projects that are on our website that you can look at if you have questions on how to fill out the sections. We'll get back to that in a second. So this is what the work plan looks like. You can add more rows as you need, but the columns are project activity. So describe the activity that's going to be completed, who will do the work. So who on your personnel table or your contractors is going to do it. And then when will it be accomplished by? So that can be a month and a year. You can have a very specific date that you want to meet. But this is kind of just explains like the steps of your project and who's going to do what and when it's going to happen. So that one should be pretty straightforward to fill out. I talked about sample project profiles. That's right here on our website. We also have a frequently asked questions document. So I'd recommend looking at that if you have a question. We also down here have all of our previous specialty crop block grant funded projects, the project descriptions for them. So you can expand them by year or expand them all, but it gives a description of how much we paid for that grant, how much was awarded, and then the general idea of what their project was. So if you ever need some inspiration or ideas, those are all on there. I think they date back to 2006. So there's a lot of projects on there that we've funded in the past. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the projects we're looking for would be. But yes, I'm always here to answer questions. My contact information is here. It's got my phone number and the general specialty crop block grant email address. So I also am getting a work cell phone in the next week or so. So once I have that number, I will start publishing that online as well so that I can be reached when I'm working, but not inside the office. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing. We have a little bit under 10 minutes, but I'm happy to help answer any questions you might have right now.